Did I hit record? Okay. Well, it would be an electric kiln. Me and Haley were talking about possibly needing to fire something. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna make slip casts of my masks. Slip? Like leftover? No. I will talk to Jerry, but I also don't want to like steal her stuff. I just need to talk to her about kiln access because I need it.
I mean, that should be fine. Like, I was supposed to be like.
Uh-huh.
Like, we like did stuff in like the material.
Okay, but
So,
you're.
like, I have like a general idea.
You're okay. You'll get officially trained at some point. I would
mean, like,
imagine.
I've been like trained. I just
Yeah, or Tim. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyways, we can work on it. Slip is one of those materials that's like, well, you know, it's like any clay material. It's literal dirt, and this is just dirt mixed with water, and anti-flocculant. Isn't that what you put in it? Say what? Anyways, it does something that turns it into slip, and yeah, so it's really cheap as a material. So you know, we can sort of bridge the gap between sculpture and ceramics, which we're going to be doing a little bit of this semester with the kits that I gave you guys, because I did give you that clay. So we are going to, you know, sort of talk about some traditional, old school level like sculpting techniques, which can come in handy. So yeah, this is a bit more of a bit more of a traditional sculpture class in terms of like the demos that I'm going to be showing you, because I'm showing you plaster, I'm showing you mold making techniques, live casting things. We're going to do some like facade type sculpting demos. I believe you guys said that you wanted to learn how to at least lay up an investment mold to do bronze casting. All of these are like very like old school techniques. If you want to go over something like more contemporary, or I don't know, this is a small class size, so we have sort of that benefit, and so you can literally like tell me what you want to learn, and I can do my best to try to do a demo on it, or at least investigate into it further. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's a two-way street. You can ask me certain things and I'll try to figure it out as best as I can, or like Zoom somebody in that does know how to do it and they can do like a guest demo or something. I was thinking about that earlier. All right, cool. So basically what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make one of those plaster molds, but we're going to go from the prototyping stage. So we're going to take plaster, we're going to mix it up just like we ordinarily would. We're going to pour it in this mold. This is a rubber mold that I used for my last show. I actually used the mold as a mold and then used the mold as a piece. So I've been toying around with that idea in my brain for a while, which is, you know, this idea that like if you get really good at mold making, like sometimes they end up being the more interesting objects. Like just the negative space and sort of how light interacts with that ends up being kind of more interesting than what came out of it. But still, it's fun. They look like giant Legos. So this is what I call a block mold, which basically I built a box. Around this. It had, you know, it was fully enclosed. This was actually the lid of the mold. And I poured silicone through these holes that I actually used a router bit to carve out. So there's actually, it's what is referred to as a chamfer bit. Oh, sorry, you can't see things. Yeah. So I used a hole saw, which you guys are probably familiar with from Sculpture One. that big chunky looking boy that goes in the drill bit. Used a hole saw to drill those holes into the piece of wood, and then I got the router and I used a chamfer bit, which basically creates sort of a shape like this. And the reason why I did that is because when you pour the silicone through there, that slight little upward V shape that happens around that hole holds the silicone in place. Like the silicone is like locked in to the board. You'll notice I've got all of those little, and I'm explaining this, I'm not showing it to you because building one of these is kind of a pain in the butt, but it's worth it because they're super sturdy and you end up with an archival level mold that you can pop things out of over and over and over again. And that is sort of the benefit of using those like pricier silicone materials. That's if you're trying to like continue to pop stuff out of there into perpetuity, like silicone is where it's at. So like I said, I showed this piece, I took a piece out of it. I'm going to continue to play with this with various materials like into my career. I might not show the work over and over and over again with the things, but I can experiment. You know, this can go from being a fine art product into being like a production mold where maybe I end up, casting wax into it and making weird masked candles. And then maybe that becomes the weird commercial side of my practice. Or maybe I cast soap into here and then I can give people like blocks of like head-shaped soap, and then they can slowly wash the facial features away, Janine Anthony, style, like as gifts or as things that I like sell if I ever need to have a side hustle. So it's one of those things where like, just because its life as a fine art object has sort of like ended does not mean that its function has gone away. Which if I do this long enough, I'm gonna end up with this weird mold making like sculpture hoard. And I'm already well on my way to doing that. I realized that when I moved into my latest apartment. It's like I filled up a moving truck and half of it was like bodies and like mother molds. Anyways, so like I said, I built the box around it. I poured the silicone through those holes, but you'll notice the wood that's on the side here. I individually cut and laminated and put basically strips of wood all the way around the perimeter of that mask to fill in negative space. That way I didn't waste as much silicone. Because otherwise that would just be a solid block of silicone, right? That silicone is like liquid gold. You don't want to waste that much silicone. Like you only need, and technically I did waste some silicone even still. But for the sake of time, it's like I got it close enough to a level that I was comfortable with. So like this is pretty thick. This is about a half inch to an inch on this one specifically of silicone. You don't have to go that thick. You could probably go a half inch, and you'll be perfectly sturdy in terms of like it not being too flexible. But again, I was engineering and working in the wood shop very quickly, and I was making like I think 12 of these simultaneously, and then also making those big boxes with the like trim and all. I don't know, I was being an insane person when I did this show last semester. So you cut corners, you make concessions where you can, and that's fine. Hold on, I'm gonna put you guys full screen. There we are, everybody's larger. So yeah, this is what we're gonna use today. I was thinking about making slip cash versions of these heads anyways, and so that is inspiration for doing this today. So we're gonna do a plaster positive of just this part. We don't need the sort of back panel, we just need the head. And keep in mind, like, these came from plastic little Halloween masks that I started with. And so I'm taking a flimsy product and then I'm basically saving that data of that shape of that mask, like forever now. I'm making very solid, sturdy versions of that original form, like for my own purposes. So I kind of feel like I'm like, I don't know, what do you call that? Like an archivist? Like I'm archiving the flimsiest of and least important things on the planet, which are these Halloween masks, but it's something that I like, and I enjoy stealing the shape of these masks. So yeah, we'll see where I go with this. I don't know. Again, sometimes like I think sometimes you guys think that like there needs to be an answer before you start making, or at least halfway through. But the thing is most of the artists that I know, they just have impulses and then they just follow the impulses, and usually the explanation comes after the fact. And sometimes it comes after they show like the work and then talk to people, and other people sort of tell them what the work is saying. That's why like artists do like studio visits, you know? They'll like invite like some trusted like friends over, and they'll just be like, let's talk about the work, because the friends will ask you questions that sort of help you figure out what your intentions are with the work, and sometimes that can guide your next steps, or at least guide how you talk about your own work.
I made my parents do that little pieces for the product.
Mm-hmm.
I was discussing it with her.
That's good. It's good to talk about your work with people, because sometimes, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I will go down a path and I think that my work is saying one thing, but in actuality it's saying the exact opposite. And then I'm just like, no, I didn't want to say that. So yeah, that's sort of how you find that out. But sometimes you're on deadline, and sometimes you don't have the time to stop and ask questions, and so you just have to trust your instincts and just go. And yeah, and as long as like you're not going to judge the end result, which that's not your job anyways, like that's other people's job. Your job is just to make it and then like, you know, pass out afterwards. And then you can wake up a week later and just be like, what'd you think? Or at least that's how I do it. All right, let's get plaster right. You want to mix plaster for me? I'm always going to ask one of you guys to mix the plaster, because I want you to get better at looking at a form and trying to anticipate how much plaster is needed. Because this is a weird skill that only develops over time. It's kind of like looking at like a jar of M&Ms and trying to figure out how many M&Ms are in the jar, except it's kind of the opposite of that. You're looking at the jar, and then you're sitting here with a bag of M&Ms trying to figure out like, all right, how many M&Ms need to go in that jar.
So, wait, why are we making plaster?
So we're gonna do a plaster positive into here,
Okay.
and then we're gonna pull that plaster positive out, and then I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm gonna put it onto a board and lay it up, basically like affix it to the board with a little bit of clay. And then we're gonna use cottle boards to create the walls, and then we're gonna pour a plaster.
So we are doing plaster, but plaster.
We're doing plaster than plaster.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no, we're gonna do a plaster positive out of here, and then we're gonna do a plaster negative to create an open face 1 part slip mold.
So, oh yeah, you're right. The split mold.
Yeah, I do.
So
Yeah, I use like a plastic cup to make a slip mold. I know somebody that used like a paper McDonald's cup to make a slip mold before.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it's supposed to like draw the
That it needs to be plaster. The mold needs to be plaster. The thing that you take a mold off of doesn't have to be plaster.
Oh no, I know. I'm talking about like.
Oh yeah. No,
like that.
say what?
Like this one just works with it.
No, you couldn't pour slip in here. That wouldn't work. Silicone is not porous at all.
What are we using? For
That's
the
why
wall?
we like it.
Oh,
You could just peel it off of everything.
Those things.
you want to demold your head?
Oh yeah,
Oh, wait. Why is it mine? Because you were the one who poured it.
you're the one who poured it.
Oh.
Remember that head from last time?
Wait, this is it? Yeah, that's it.
Abby poured plaster into it, so we're gonna see what it looks like.
Remember, it was that if you leave alginate long enough, it just starts up.
Just remember. Do you remember the to be
Am I
continued?
ruining the mold in the process? Or is that when it's salvaged?
Try and salvage it, I guess.
You're not gonna be able to salvage it. It has been like 48 hours since that thing was like poured.
It is. That's
Remember, I told you guys there's about an 8-hour window. I believe I referred to alginate as being creepy when it dries up. We have gone well into creepy stage.
Cool though.
It starts to look like a zombie. It's all like dried up.
It kind of looks like how if Barney shed.
If Barney shed. Okay, that's a very specific explanation. I'm gonna move this here, and then I'm gonna have you reveal it on camera if that's all right with you.
Can I make a mess?
Yeah, you can make a mess. Just don't throw it on my computer. On camera.
Hello guys, you cannot see my head. I will sit down. I'm the teacher now. Am I supposed to talk? Hi guys. Wait, can I just break this? This is kind of cool. I'm kind of scared.
Listen, we only sometimes involve destruction. Break it up.
Have this.
That's the mother. That's the creepy zombie alginate.
It's kind of cool.
See, like even that's a cool texture. Like you could definitely make a mold of that. Because that's the weird stuff that I do, which is make a mold and then make a mold of that mold and then make a casting of that casting. Never enough for me.
Oh, it's this face.
Oh dang, that's good.
Look, it's like she's got a crack in her head. Well, that's good. That captured well.
Yeah,
It
that's
almost
that's alginate on a plaster casting of a face that was pulled out of a silicone mold.
It's a little bit shallow here.
That's dented in. So that, if you look at the box that's over there,
Is it? What do you
that
think?
dent is in that box.
Okay, so it's
Again,
not from us.
That's from where the key didn't get pushed into the hole appropriately. And so that's what I was talking about. That's why you always want to check your mold and make sure everything's like lined up, because otherwise you'll end up with a weirdo caved in face. Or a caved in leg.
It looks like she has snot coming out. Or something. I don't know if you can see that. This is good. This meeting is being recorded.
Say what?
I said this meeting is being recorded.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the mold. I'm gonna clean this up now.
So that's alginate. That's the level of detail you can get from alginate from a plaster casting. Creepy face.
Oh my gosh, this is hard.
Yeah. Welcome to my world. All right, let's clear it out. Body.
Okay. Does anyone want this? Because I think I'm gonna throw it away.
Yeah, throw it away.
Okay.
And then we'll keep the casting. We always keep the casting. Listen, if I have my way, I'm going to fill this place with body parts until we drown in them.
I guess I can sweep that up.
That's good. Thank you. Oh yeah, see? That picked up pretty good. So we got really good really good texture on this in terms of like the cracks in the lips and like the pores. But half of that really good texture is because it came from a silicone cast to begin with. So I just want to warn you of that. Like, you're not necessarily going to get that same level of like pore texture in your alginate molds. I mean, you'll get pretty good texture, but you might not get like this crazy level of texture. I mean, the fact that we were able to get that off of a plaster positive is insane. And part of that is because A, not a living human being, so no squirmies. And B is, again, it was that silicone that was the original sort of data, because silicone will pull every single like detail of your pore structure off of your face. Again, it's like I said, it's that forensic level detail, like where it can literally pick up like if a tattoo is raised or not. So that stuff's wild. It's expensive, but you know, again, if you're in the business of making bodies and you need to make a bunch of bodies, or you want to have, you know, these archive, if you want to have an archive of rando body parts, like, yeah, the silicone is good for that. Because then you always have an arm mold lying around, and so you can just keep casting into them, especially if you make them well. All right, but we don't need that. That's for you. Okay. Is it thick?
Yeah.
Dip your hand in it. That's thin. Shake a little in there. Yes, you're creating a whole scene over there. Any questions so far?
Can you paint plaster with?
No. You see this cord set up? I cannot pivot. Sorry, what? Can you paint plaster?
Yeah, like without sealing it or anything, or is
You might need to seal it in order to like paint like acrylic onto it.
Gotcha.
Oh, hello, dog friend. Yeah, I would do a clear coat on it.
Okay.
Just to put a barrier between the plaster and whatever you want to paint. But you can also not seal it, and you can do like, you know, you can use like watercolor or water down like gouache and use its porosity like to your advantage and kind of like create washes over it. I think we have some painted like painted plaster examples like here. Like Brian, although the color. Can somebody turn the overheads on? Abby, can you get the overhead lights on? I just realized we're sitting in the dark. No reason. I mean, it's hard to see, but like he's got like a bunch of like washes and stuff on there. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. You know, this is more like a painterly version of a hand. It's got, you know, like really bright yellows and blues and reds, sort of like painted into and soaked into like the cavities and the crevices of the hands, which if you've ever tried to paint skin texture, oh, hey, that's something I can show you guys how to do. I haven't actually taught anybody how to do that, and I'm relatively self-taught at it. But I can show you guys how I paint my figures if you want.
Yeah.
It's honestly just, it's a weird intuitive process, but I can walk you through the steps that I've like established for doing stuff like that.
I would definitely appreciate that because I've tried to do that with glaze before.
With glaze, it's really hard.
I know.
Like if you're doing underglaze, like on ceramics, and you're trying to get skin texture, or not skin texture, but like
I did a lot of
like
It was harder when Stella was on.
I've done it. So I did a cup for my friend that had Andre 3000 on it. And I had to like figure out how to like paint like, you know, the different parts of like his like hair and like skin coloring, and that was really difficult with underglazes, and it did require a crazy amount of mixing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was going to turn out. So underglazes, that's like,
because it doesn't like you just have to. It's like a
well, it's not true to the color.
No.
So you
No,
have
it's
to
fine.
know what the color is going to look like, especially when it's
Like,
mixed.
that's why it's so hard because it's literally a guessing game.
Well, and so painting a figure is kind of like that too, because you have to you start with these colors at their like full
Do you use acrylic?
pigment. I do. I use like a high flow
High
flow acrylics, like with like airbrush medium. I airbrush all of my figures.
Really?
Yeah.
No, that seems smart.
When you can run underglaze through an airbrush.
Yeah, that seems-
You ready? Okay. All right, Haley mixed plaster off camera for us. So we're gonna get this in here. Okay, you're almost spot on. All right, so I'm gonna get a little. No, I'm just gonna use a wood scrap. So I'm gonna scrape the top of that. 'Cause
How much water did you use?
I want it to be flat.
Like half.
What?
Water. How much did you use?
I put in like, I want to say 16 ounces and some change.
Oh,
I'm look stand where I'm standing. See 16
Oh, okay,
ounces?
okay,
I
yeah.
put 16 ounces and some change, and then the rest was plastic.
Okay, so like I said, I want this to be like flat. So I'm actually gonna use just like a little scrap piece of wood to like get the excess off of the surface. And then I'm just gonna like leave it there because it'll set up and then it's sort of out of my way. At the same time, remember, plaster needs to be agitated so the bubbles get out of it. We have this much more fun experience when it's a rubber mold.
Do you pop the bubbles with your hand?
I'm just agitating it and it forces all of the bubbles to come to the back side of the casting because this is the back of the face. You don't want them on like trapped like around the nose or on the front of the face. The back of the face I can literally sand down with sandpaper and make it like completely smooth. So I'm okay with the bubbles being on the back end because I can remove them. You can poke them, but like more are just gonna like rise up. And so there's like probably some air in here. Because it's kind of, it's hard to see because if I had the camera right here and you were looking directly in that direction, you could probably see like part of the plaster was kind of like domed up, and I don't want that. And even after I did that first pass, it's like when I agitated the mold, it like started to rise up a little bit. And so part of that is just like, well, part of it is probably the table isn't level. And so it looks like everything is sloping in this direction.
It is,
So cardinal rule of mold making is level your mold, and I didn't do that. So now I got to figure it out. And then I typically have weird little wood chips around.
There's a plaster in my thing. Oh no, right here.
Yeah.
Like, you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if you can see that. I need to ever so slightly shim up one of the corners. These are shims. It's basically just tiny pieces of wood that you can use a utility knife to scrape down a corner of it, and you're basically creating like a door stopper type shape. And you use it to shim up molds. It's basically where you're just trying to get that bubble further to center. So enough. And whenever you're leveling something off, you want to level it in one direction, but you also want to level it in another direction because you might have to lift up one of the corners to make sure that it's level in both cardinal directions. So that actually needs to be lifted even more. And concrete floors every time. There we go. So now we got a bubble in the middle here. And then you guys can't see it, but the bubble had to be adjusted in this direction. So I'm just sticking those little things in there. And so now I'm going to take my little scrapey stick and I move it in the opposite direction. You know, it's basically filling in where it was trying to pile up. So I'm just giving it a couple of passes. And we've gotten most of the moisture out of there, or most of the air bubbles rather, but I can still just like, I'm a very thorough agitator. I'll do it for like a while. And now we play the waiting game, which is really annoying. And it would be great if I was like Martha Stewart and I was just like, well, we have a head right here. And then like start the next step, but I'm not. So we're gonna wait. This is why I love these masks, because there aren't any undercuts. And so making molds of these is really, really, really easy. Like, I probably didn't have to make a silicone mold of these masks. I probably could have made a plaster positive, but I knew that I was going to be making them for that show out of like fiberglass resin. Because fiberglass resin is a very sturdy archival material. So I knew that in order to do fiberglass resin, I had to do a silicone mold, because fiberglass resin you can't do in plaster. And you can't do in alginate, because alginate has what? Water. And what does resin hate? Water. Like straight up, they hate each other. So they can never like come into contact. There's like one type of resin that is sold from Reynolds Advanced Materials, AKA the Smooth-On distributor in Chicago that we order from. There's one type of resin that basically sets up immediately, that apparently, supposedly, there are myths that you can pour it into an alginate mold and it will still set up. But it's almost like you have to like mix it at the speed of light and then immediately pour all of it into the mold, like, because that's how quickly it sets up. So basically what happens is the pot life on that is so short that it doesn't have time to even think about having the like inhibition reaction with the water coming out of the alginate mold. Like, there's no time for it to be like, no, I hate you.
Oh, because it's so bad.
Yeah, because it happens so quickly that.
Oh, so you're like pouring.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's probably gonna take a while because plaster like wants air. You have that fan? Sit over in metal. Can we get the fan? We're gonna try to speed this up and put a fan on it.
Are we gonna use that board for the bottom?
I don't know. There's a board over there I think I can grab.
Are these for floor only or what?
No, I use those for tabletop. The dustpan, I don't know. It might be in the metal top.
Is the dustpan not there?
Oh, yeah.
And we'll see how far we get with this today. Again, you know, I'm working with like curing times and set times and also you guys have already been shown like more demos than
Yeah, we're like demo crazy.
like any other class I've ever had. That's not true, but usually I haven't shown this many by the third week. Is it only week 3?
Yeah.
How is it September?
I don't know.
I don't understand how this happened.
That last night.
I don't understand how we got here. We'll see. Maggie got good news. Mackenzie, I don't think you were online. Maggie got good news. She tested negative and can return in person next week.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's so great.
I'm so excited. Like, I'm so used to like being in one location. It's gonna be so nice to like be like, whoa, I'm in another place. That's like such an upgrade.
I'm in public.
Yeah, a place where there's like space to make a mess. Amazing.
Is your dorm room carpeted?
Yeah, it's like 100% carpet.
Gross.
Yeah. We've got a small balcony though, and I can interact with my roommates now because we all tested negative, and my friend is willing to get a live cast of her hand, so I'm gonna experiment with that this week and see how it goes.
Already?
Mhm.
That's yeah. This whole thing has been like kind of funny because I'm like, hey, yeah, this is how you do live casting, except you can't get 6 feet near somebody. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, finding a model is always tricky, though.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, you have to be ethical about it. I believe in compensating models in some way. It's a little bit harder for like you guys to do at like the undergraduate stage. Don't have a whole lot of like expendable cash lying around, you know, but like buying somebody lunch,
Mhm.
like I think is a good way to do it. Or, you know, yeah, if they're just like offering to do it, you know, like returning the favor in some way.
Yeah.
Don't forget to make a contract.
Oh yeah, don't forget to make a contract.
Oh yes.
Like saying that you're not at fault.
Your hand falls off.
If someone's hand falls off.
Mm.
Well, I do a general release form, which basically says, hey, you're giving me permission to use this mold of your body into perpetuity. So yeah, like if I do a head cast, for somebody, it means that like I can use the head for more than one prototype and just keep using it. And that's, you know, but I also have conversations about like what my model is comfortable with in terms of like how they're being depicted, you know, because I've done casts that are like sensitive, you know, areas like, you know, torsos that included like breasts and things, and I had a conversation with the model about that part of the mold and said like, okay, well, what are you comfortable with? You know, should I use this mold for like another piece? You know, and she was like, well, I'm not comfortable. I'm comfortable with being nude for the casting or for the live cast, but I'm not comfortable with you using the nude cast for another figure. And so like if I were to use that body, I would like clothe it. you know, or put clothing on it for the prototype. So
Like, is there one? Would you, so, what did you actually end up doing?
what?
Like, what did you end up doing?
Oh, well, that was my full size like standing figure that has the blanket over it.
Yeah, so, but since she was okay with that, did you stop other things? Or did
She just said no. She said that I could use the mold more than once, but if I was going to use it for another casting or for a different piece, that like, yeah, it would have to be covered or clothed in something.
but not for you?
The original one was covered.
Oh, what?
It had a giant duvet cover over the whole body. Like you couldn't see anything. Like honestly, it was dumb that I did like an archival full-size figure of that because you couldn't see half of the body. I could have just made it out of foam with like arms stuck in the foam and like legs, because that's all you saw of that piece. Which I learned my lesson for like the figure at Webster. Like the figure at Webster, like the only thing that was body double cast was just the feet. Everything that was like up top was literally a plaster bandage casting that I did of somebody's like thighs to their shoulders, like sort of an old-timey bathing suit shape. All of that was plaster bandage, and then I greased the hell out of it, and then poured expandable foam, like a 2-part expandable foam into there, and so it's just a foam core body with like 2 legs like poked into it and like glued on. And then it's wearing the like sweatpants and like hoodie. So like if you're doing clothes figures, you don't have to use expensive materials. Like that expandable foam, you can get like a gallon kit of it for like, I don't know, like $60.
Is that the stuff that Brian?
He uses a type of expandable foam. I order like a polyurethane 2-part liquid where you actually mix it together, and it doesn't come in a can. Well, I like it because you can pour it as a liquid and control where it's being poured, but also it comes in a variety of densities. So you can get expandable foam that expands twice its size, or you can get expandable foam that goes all the way up to expanding 15 times its size. And so a little bit can quite literally go a very long way. So you can sort of play with those expansion levels. A foam, yeah, I can show you guys like the foam that I work with. They also have a version of it that is a flexible foam. So like you pour the foam, it expands, but then once once the casting has cured, it literally is like memory foam. Like you can squish it. So you can make things. They use it for movie props. So you can make things like cinder blocks that like look like cinder blocks, and they're painted like cinder blocks, but in actuality, like it's like a plushie. And so you could use it for like stage combat or theater. So you could have like a cinder block and then just like hit somebody over the head with it in like a fight scene. A lot of the different types of materials and things like that, they have implications with like special effects and stuff like that, which is cool if you're into that and you want to nerd out about it. But for its art making capabilities, like unless you're into like performance art and maybe like making your own like props and things, for like video art, anything like that. It doesn't have a whole lot of like fine art implications. But the regular expandable foam that's kind of like gloopy and gloppy, like that has a very like, some people are attracted to that and use it as an actual almost like painterly kind of material. Again, it's kind of cheap. There's a lot of bang for your buck there. All right, so I'm scraping off this excess plaster, getting it out of the way. And if you guys are ever like curious about materials, different types of materials, like go on the Reynolds Advanced Material website. like, and just start reading. Just start reading about things that exist and why there's so many different types. Because I mean, it's the amount of products that are out there are kind of insane. And then in mold making and casting specifically, there's a bunch of different distributors. So I have a preference for using Smooth-On casting products and mold making materials. A lot of people are using aqua resin as their casting resin nowadays, and it's because it's non-caustic and it doesn't off-gas. You can use it in like small studio spaces. However, in terms of paying for it, it's more expensive, and it's because you're paying for that level of like safety. But I've seen that grow in popularity more and more these days. There's the place that we got that clay that I got you guys, that Protolina, that's from this company in Texas called Brick in the Yard Mold Making Supply. They have different mold making silicones and resins, some of which I really want to try, just because they are a small sort of mom and pop type business that's they've been doing a ton of demos that I really like, and so just by watching their videos, I know that they know their shit, which leads me to believe that their products might actually be pretty good. But I haven't gotten around to like trying it out yet. All right, so I'm gonna get a paper towel so we can kind of clean some of this stuff up and hopefully pop this bad boy out.
Now, isn't a thing plaster? We're doing plaster and plastering, so it has to be like down.
What?
Like, since it's plaster and plaster, like, like that.
You need to speak louder.
Because you know how you said plaster is like you said plaster, black plaster, white plaster.
Well, we don't want it to stick.
But like, are we gonna have to plaster it on?
Yeah, we're gonna put Vaseline on it. I have a thing of it in my bag over there. So this is just a wet paper towel, so I can literally like use a little bit of moisture to like fill in some of those gaps and to redistribute some of the plaster, which probably means that this like isn't quite ready to like pop out of the mold yet. It's still a little soft. But for the purposes of cleaning up the back, that moisture kind of helps me sort of sand and buff some stuff out. Okay, about 50 minutes. Yeah. Doing this class first, I always end up with like a ton of cleanup, like after this class. Yeah. Right in there? Yeah. For, oh, the 5-gallon kit? Yeah. Four quarts. Well, so like this is 2.5. So like 4/4 would be like 2 of these. So part A and part B most likely. All right, shimmed away. Okay. Trying to decide how I want to do this. 4 pounds. All right. So getting this out of this particular mold might be a little tricky. No, it won't just tap out. Those eyeballs are probably gonna give us some trouble. I might have to give your sculpting tools. A shim? You mean a shim? Yeah, but I don't think I can get the proper amount of leverage. So let me grab my sculpting tool. So when you're demolding stuff, a lot of the time you end up needing like some point of leverage to like pop something out. You can also use air. So like if you're working in like the studio like this and you have the air compressor, you can literally blow air up in there. Yeah, you wanna somebody wanna grab the air hose and bring it over here? You got the old handy dandy wooden something that was in your kit. But I don't want to place like a ton of pressure like on the mold because I don't want to just chip, you know, a piece of it off. So the air might be the safest bet. The like ultimate safest bet would be like if this was a less sturdy mold. Like I kind of hate trying to demold stuff out of these because I made them so tight into that wood thing that like demolding stuff you usually have to push something in there and pry it out. And I have definitely broken one of the fiberglass pieces that way. So like plaster is super brittle, right? So like I don't even know if this is gonna demold, which is kind of the fun part, because you guys get to experience me failing, which I think is important because you should never think that your like instructors do it perfect every time because they don't.
Don't want these things flying out.
Can you turn the air compressor on? Little button on the side. I'm carving back a little channel for the air to go into.
E-Man now?
Two-Face. Okay. I probably should have brought E-Man in. I think his probably would have been a little easier. Oh, but that mold is like so heavy. It's not that one. I did 3 to begin with, and they were made different. But his mold isn't a box mold like this. It's a different one. I mean, it is a box mold, but like it has like a plaster mother, so it's really heavy. All right, we already lost. No, because it's building up there. So probably gonna lose part of his hair. I was expecting that because it's pretty thin. It's like paper thin right there. And I can always rebuild it and like add it back on with clay and kind of sculpt it quickly for the casting. So that's our positive. I didn't clean the molds very well, so there's some cat hair in there.
Wow, that's a cool one.
So keep in mind, like, you know, whenever you're casting your official casting material, be it wax or soap or whatever, clean your mold out. So yeah, now we have a very sturdy plaster positive that we can then take a plaster negative out of. Now I'm probably gonna have to do a little bit of clay work like in these eye holes, simply because my clay work probably wasn't perfect the first time, and I want to make sure that plaster doesn't get stuck in there. So I'll probably like almost create like almost like a bevel that goes ever so slightly like inward to make sure that the plaster that goes in there will draft out. Same thing, like the nose holes I'll probably just have to plug up for this casting, and then whenever I pour slip into the mold and then take the slip casting out, I can just use a clay tool and like carve the nostrils back in. Because we don't want there to be any undercuts that will trap this prototype into our plaster mold. Great. Keep fun. And keep in mind, like, you know, this is like children's mask size, right? When you actually cast clay slip into a plaster mold, it shrinks. And then when you fire it, it shrinks again. So like, I don't know what the size of this thing is actually gonna be. So it probably won't be mask sized anymore. It might be like miniature. But apparently I want to do it anyways, so we'll find out.
It's kind of like my grandmother used to have these like porcelain decorative like masks, and they were too small for anyone to wear. But
There's plaster all over my computer right now. Just like plaster dust on my computer. So we might not get to the like plaster pouring stage. But so whenever I'm doing like a layup for a mold, you know, I'll get a board that's like big enough, you know, to where I can sort of do the general rule of sort of plaster mold making, which is where you want, you know, a few inches in every single direction of the prototype or whatever you're trying to make a mold out of. And the reason is you want about like, I don't know, I was always told 2 inches off of the piece, and that's because 2 inches is like the optimal amount of plaster for drawing out moisture from the clay. Who knows? Like, you can get away with it if it's like thicker, you can get away with it if it's thinner. You want it to be relatively consistent, like I said, coming off of every direction of what you're doing. You're not always going to be able to get it super consistent, but the closer you can get it to being like an even amount of plaster, the more even the moisture will get drawn out of the plaster. Meaning like you won't have one part of the mold like drying up real fast while the other one's like still like super wet. And then you end up with like something drying up too fast and then cracking off, and then you don't get a full like casting, right? So you want it to be even, that way it kind of like dries at like the same rate, and then like it's all parts of the mold are ready to be demolded at the same time. That's what you want. So we need to grab some clay because I need to clay up around the edges and basically seal this guy down to this board. And then we're going to be using what are referred to in mold making terms as coddle boards. I don't know why they are called coddle boards. I think it is because they coddle whatever the piece is. They sort of like hold it. And then they are held, or they coddle each other. That's how they function. There's 4 of them. These are really great to have and really easy to make. So this is literally just a piece of melamine. And then there's another smaller piece of melamine. And then there's just 2 screws, and that's it. And basically what you do is you cut 4 pieces that are this size, 4 pieces that are this size, and then you have a set of coddle boards. Yeah, if you want to bring me some C-clamps over, that'll be great. So again, like building a set of these and then buying a set of 4 C-clamps, like automatically sets you up to have a mold making studio, kind of. So it's just something to like keep in mind. You know, whenever you're making in the future, like one of the reasons why I got really into this is because I realized that it can be reusable. Yeah, it doesn't work too. Like a lot of these materials can be reusable, and then at the same time, you can do it in a variety of spaces, big and small. Yeah, they're fine.
That's what it's called.
Those are not C-clamps, those are F-clamps, but they're usable.
Okay.
C-clamps are the ones that like are small at the bottom over here. But the F-clamps will work, don't worry about it. Ideally, I would use this. So this is where the clay that I got you guys would really come in handy. Because it's not like water-based clay, meaning it's not going to try to crack on you. Like for sealing things down.
Yeah.
So like plaster likes water, right? So clay has water in it, and so it sucks the water out of the clay, and the clay dries up really fast, and then it makes it real hard to seal something down. And so you typically, when you're working with regular clay against plaster in capacity like this, you have to work hella fast, and you have to keep a spray bottle near you because you have to keep everything like moist so it doesn't dry out. So I'm just taking like a little bit of clay and basically creating a bead around this sort of shape. I can use like my clay tools to clean it up like later. But again, I'm like working against time and moisture, right? Can you grab me like a little bit of water and like a paintbrush over there? No, I think a paintbrush or the water will work good. I mean, this isn't fresh clay to begin with. This is like a bag that's been kind of open, so. Does it? Paintbrush is in the sink. Oh. Wet. Anyways, this is regular clay. You guys have you guys have the nice shit. I got you non-water based clay. So if you use it wisely, and don't like get a bunch of plaster and stuff like embedded into it, but like are really diligent with how you like clean and like pick debris out of the clay, you'll be able to reuse that over and over and over and over and over again. And again, it's not water based, so like you won't have the issue of like it drying out or anything like that. It's an oil-based clay. It's also sulfur free. So again, sulfur is in some modeling clays and would literally interact with silicone, aka it would prevent it from setting up. And so what you would end up with is just silicone that never sets. And so it stays sticky forever. And trust me, you don't want that to happen. I've had that happen before. It sucks. So Two Face kind of had a little baby undercut on his chin. And so I'm actually filling that in because I don't want any undercuts. Even just the slightest little like something can prevent this thing from coming out. Remember, this is a plaster prototype. It's hard plaster going against more hard plaster. They're the same materials, which means they have the same tensile strength, which means like you don't want them to fight one another. You want them to just like ever so slightly kiss and then go their separate ways. We're gonna put a layer of Vaseline in between them so they don't get stuck together. Because we don't want any attachments. It's only casual. It's mold making, only casual. So yeah, I'm just sort of like filling in that area, making sure that it sort of drafts sort of in a convex way rather than like a concave situation. And I'm doing it, I'm not shoving like a giant piece of like material in there. I'm just slowly working like a little bit of material in there at a time because I don't want to create like a goiter or something like on his chin. I'm trying to stay relatively true to shape. This is what I'm talking about when it dries up. Not a fun situation. And this is where you can kind of like have fun with like plaster castings that you guys sort of choose to make. Because you can literally take a plaster casting and you can use that clay and you can sculpt onto the faces that you make or fingers or hands or whatever, and you can like sort of create something like maybe more monstrous or weird or you know decaying or what have you. Like you can start to play literally, you know, with half of it being cast and half of it being sculpted, and then you can take a mold off of that. Which like that's how all like special effects makeup and stuff like that is built. They have a plaster of somebody's face and then they literally custom sculpt the prosthetics like onto a solid form. Again, got to keep that moist so I can literally, it doesn't dry up and like shift on me again. And whenever I'm doing like clay or layup work, I usually have like a container. I usually have a container of water and like a paintbrush, just because I like to be able to clean up my molds really well. And you know, if you're using traditional clay like this, because it's dirt and it's cheap, and it's dirt cheap, you know, you definitely want to have the moisture available to kind of like keep everything copacetic. and not dried out. So like if you're working with like this type of clay, you have to work really, really fast. And you can't like walk away from it. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know, we've got like 20 minutes or something. Like I might not have time to like mix up the plaster like for this mold within the confines of this class. But because I'm doing the clay work now, I would want to like keep doing this even after you guys are gone, because otherwise I'm like wasting the clay work. And like I would have to like redo it later. And I'm incredibly OCD when it comes to mold making, and I will straight up have like Q-tips for cleaning up a mold, like available at all times. Because like, let's say we were doing a silicone mold and not a plaster mold. Like silicone, like I wouldn't want any speck of like dirt or whatever on there, because silicone can pick it up. Like, so if there's a loose piece of dirt in there, like that loose piece of dirt will get trapped in silicone, and then who knows, it might come out in my first casting. And let's say I wanted my first casting to be like pure white, and all of a sudden there's like a speck of like gross like clay in there, like smack dab in the middle of the forehead that I'm trying to get. Again, like being diligent can pay off. I mean, usually your first casting is the throwaway casting anyways. It's kind of like the first pancake. You need to have relatively low expectations for the first casting. Because the likelihood that it's got some schmutz or garbage in it is pretty high. Again, being mindful of the shape, being mindful of like what's gonna like draft out. You know, you can use a tool to like aid me in this process, help me clean stuff up. You know, again, I'll use some water. I don't need necessarily all of that clay on there. It might be gumming up some of the detail of what I'm trying to capture. You can just wipe it away. Just realized you guys were staring at the back of my head. You're gonna shout at me when I do that. Hey, your noggin's in the way. For stuff like this, it might actually be beneficial for like at some point you guys to like log in too, or like bring in your computers, just because like I think you guys are actually seeing more than they are right now, because they have to like stay 6 feet away from me. Meanwhile, you guys are like all up in my grill, so. Haley's like, I've done this before. I have the general gist.
I mean, Troy just throws in a 2-part hole. He didn't give us like a hole or anything like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, because it's not as like, it's not as hard as it seems. Like the two part is when it gets tricky. But I like to be thorough. And I also think it's important, or at least helpful from a mold making standpoint, if you're told at least once by an instructor why you're doing something the way that you're doing it. Because if you know the why, you won't question it, you won't get complacent, and you won't forget it because you'll know that it is a necessary step. Because it is preventing X, Y, and Z from happening. And so I do think it is important to like at least do a run through of certain information at least once, just because it leads to less, I think, dumb accidents or failures. The clay is drying out in my hands over time.
My first plastic map was like on a perfect sphere.
Why would you do that to yourself?
I don't know.
You thought it was going to be an easy object to do a perfect sphere?
Oh no, I've never been that dumb. What I wanted to do, like I wanted to have like a slip past like eyes. And so I was like, well, I want to steer for that. So but it didn't get stuck.
Just trying to make eyeballs.
It was like an installation piece. I had to like get it stapled together, find it cast iron, seal it.
I talked to Troy last night, actually.
Oh no, it was like for a slip cast project, and I just used it ping pong balls with it.
This was back when Haley was taking ceramics. Man, Troy put you guys through the ringer.
He did. He went through a whole bunch, but it was a lot of fun. He made a toy robot out of like these little like toy guns. That was really cool.
All right, so I'm just trying to rust this out pretty quickly. Again, I'm being lazy and I'm not like digging into that toolkit. That would like make this go a lot faster. I'm just like ham-handsing everything with my like fingers. And like using a shim as a tool, like, but also a great example. Everything is a tool. Does it have a straight edge? That's a tool. Does it have a scoopy edge, like a spoon? That's also a tool. Like, honestly, if you have a kitchen, you usually have sculpting tools available.
Yeah, half of my school here,
Like forks and knives and
no, we had special drawers, but we also had like random stuff too. Like one of those things.
meat cleaver.
Oh, there's just a bunch of stuff that I've never seen. What do you think?
And again, like it might be a little rough. It might not be perfect. You can be like me and be like a crazy perfectionist. You know, and sit here and like do the clay work for like an hour and just make it like hella smooth, hella like perfect and double checked for like undercuts and all of that jazz. Or you could work rougher, you know, because especially if you're doing like, you know, if this is going to be a slip casting like mold, you're going to have a material that like is going to have sort of a mind of its own anyways, and it's a soft material that like isn't going to be like finite, meaning that like you'll be able to work the casting as well. So like you can pull a casting out of there. Where did I put my little ball of clay? Frank, where'd you go? Ah, here it is. You know, so you'll be able to pull like the clay positive or the clay casting out of the mold, and then you'll be able to like literally wet a sponge and like buff areas out. Like that's kind of one of the selling points of like working with these materials is that like there's forgiveness in them. Like there's still things that like you can do to fix them, because there's multiple stages even after you take it out of the mold. Now, that also means that there are multiple stages that can F it up. Meaning like ceramics is one of those things that like you have to have a lot of patience and you have to have a lot of like willingness to fail. And that's because like there are things that can be completely out of your control with ceramics, and they can just go wrong, and then you just have to be okay with it. Like things explode in the kiln. Sometimes things like, don't fire correctly, so like your finish might not turn out okay. Yeah, sometimes somebody else's piece or somebody else's decision causes like an explosion. Anyways, it's a test in patience, it's a test in trust. But if you're that type of person that like can take those risks and you're well adjusted to failure, then like it's an excellent avenue. And I don't draw a distinction between like, oh, ceramics is a craft and sculpture is a fine art. I don't draw that distinction, which is one of the reasons why I'm showing you how to do this stuff, because I think I've seen enough fine art ceramics that like it's definitely like there is a crossover, especially with like sculptural like objects. So that's our finished little guy. Perimeter. I'm gonna grab a little bit more clay and just shove it in those eye holes and nose holes. That bag is just like, oh no. I was just saying that bag is a little. Yeah, I mean I can resaturate it at some point, but. Again, I'm gonna fill in the nostrils. Again, it's like I'm filling in the eye holes a little bit, and that's just because I want there to be sort of a hollow there. Honestly, I'm probably gonna cut the eyes out whenever I get like a silicone, or not a silicone, but a slip cast of it. So I just need to kind of know where the limitations of those eyes are. I mean, you possibly could, sure. Not about to do that right now. So yeah, I'm filling that in mostly, but really I'm just gonna give it like a real vague shape. Because I don't want a bunch of plaster to get in there and then make my job really hard. In terms of demolding. Same thing, like this little like face shape, it looked like I had like an air bubble in the casting, so it ends up, I hate this. I can't blow on it. Sculpting with a mask on is vaguely annoying, but fine. Actually, I sculpt with a mask on most of the time anyways, because I work with resin and it's poisonous and you have to wear a full respirator. That's what I don't get. A bunch of like all of the people that like are going out and just being like, I can't breathe in this thing. And I was like, bitch, yes you can. Like, Like if I can wear a respirator for 8 hours a day while doing fiberglass and be fine, like you can wear a piece of like cloth on your face.
Unless you're fine.
I mean, people with asthma are like, people wear a face shield. Or like, people with asthma have been like, no, I
Well,
can just find it.
It's because I was like working my laptop at night because I only like open up every day. And I had mono. I didn't realize it. And so I was like, wow, they're right. It is like a big one. Then I said mono. And then I got over mine. And now I was like, what do you mean? It's not like a big mask.
No, like, you just had mono. It's hard to
Like, that's
breathe when you
fine.
have mono.
Except I thought that's what it was actually like because I never like really wanted to just walk mask before.
Well, you wear consignment. Did you ever wear like,
Yeah, but like it was just like it was covered in long obviously long.
Anyways,
It's
it's fine, I guess. Like, this is why I like using water, because water and like a piece of cloth like almost works like sandpaper. In terms of like when you're doing stuff like this, you're just like, I can do like vague cleanup with like tools and stuff, but then I can just come in with like water and a cloth, and it just makes everything like way better. It smooths everything out. So like, yeah, see, now he's looking much more menacing and evil. That's what we want. So I'm just gonna fill in these nostrils. Again, I can drill those out. Or carve them out with a tool later. But like that, you can see like plaster, I'm pouring plaster on top of this. Plaster could go in those nostrils, and then when I try to lift the mold off of it, it would go in the nostrils and then officially connect with this mask, and I wouldn't be able to get the mask off without breaking those nostrils off anyways. So I'm just gonna prevent that from happening by putting like clay in there. Because then there's nowhere for the plaster to go.
I'm trying to remember. Split casting and split.
And so you're gonna do this for basically like any,
Does that have any other like?
you can do it for any object. You check for undercuts, and anything that has an undercut, fill it in. Like, it needs to be able to draft out. And this is where you get into multi-part molds. So like in ceramics, you can get crazy. You can take like an object and then try to figure out how to draft it to where you can get every single detail of an object without filling in the undercuts. And that's where you get like, 16-part ceramic slip cast molds. Like, they get really complicated, but really cool. But they're very hard to engineer. Like, you have to build like clay walls over here and pour that part, and then take the clay wall off, and then keep that part in place, and then build another clay wall over here, and then also build a clay base, and then pour that piece, and then keep that piece like clamped to that piece, and then flip the whole thing over, and then build another clay wall, and another clay wall, and another base, and then pour that piece. Like, you can really nerd out on this type of stuff, but what you end up with are like these impossible ceramic objects, that look like, an Italian greyhound, like a full-sized Italian greyhound, and you're just like, that looks like it's an actual dog, and it's not. It was taken off of like a taxidermy model. All right, I know a person who made like a slip cast mold of a lobster.
nice.
Yeah, it's fun. So this is like, that's roughed up. I would say that that's like generically ready to throw cottle boards around. You seam up the cottle, you know how I push clay in here, all around here? You do the same process once you get the cottle boards in place. You clay around the edges and you clay up the edges to fill in any gaps that might be there, to prevent, plaster from blowing outside of your mold. If there's even a slight crack, remember plaster is liquid when we pour it. If there's even like a slight little baby crack, like the plaster is going to be like, I see you, and it's going to go in there, and then you're going to have what is referred to in the mold making world as a blowout, where the material blows out of your mold, usually at like a speed that you are not prepared for, and it's devastating. Yeah, you can use flashing. So you can use like a thin bendable metal to create a shape, and then you basically like create a circle or whatever, and you use packing tape to seal, to seal it together, and then you can clay that down on the outside and the inside if you're doing that. Because I had a really crazy blowout with that swan mold with Paige last semester. And it's because the clay like dried out or it wasn't packed in too much, and she was pouring a 5-gallon bucket worth of plaster. It was everywhere. So, in terms of paddleboard, but yeah, that would be a great example of a material that you could get your hands on if you can't build a set of paddleboards. But I do at least wanted to explain what these are and how they work, just because, like I said, really great if you guys come back on campus and like invest in a little bit of melamine and make yourselves a set of these, because you'll have them forever and you can always use them. Because melamine, like stuff doesn't want to stick to melamine. I mean, I'm tempted to just use that cardboard tube over there. Over there by the dust collector. Let's see, Emily has to remember how to use cottle boards. It goes this way. Also feel like I don't have enough room. So remember what I said, you want to try to get like an even amount of room. I'm gonna have to move the setup back. Hold on. Still good? Okay. All right, so get out of here, plaster. So you want to like set these up where they sort of pinwheel around your material. Basically those little like square, I don't want that. You gotta go even further. Get on board, little buddy. Yeah, and basically we're trying to like figure out where they need to go so that I'm not wasting a bunch of plaster, right? So I'm getting like an inch or an inch or so. Like in there, and then I'll place a clamp here, here, and then there'll be 2 more. And you can I like these because you can adjust them. You can clamp 2 and 2 together and kind of slide them in and out to get the perfect shape. You can kind of see they're like, this literally looks like a pinwheel. And so, yeah, basically what you do is you do that, you clay up the inside, you clay up, the inseams. These are relatively new cottle boards, so they still fit together pretty tightly. But if you have like an old beat up pair, like it'll still do it, but you just might have to do a little bit more clay work to make sure that it's seamed. And then what I would do is grab a chip brush, a clean chip brush. I would get some Vaseline and I would brush it over the whole thing. brush it over like this wood panel that we have on the bottom since I don't have melamine. Brush it on the plaster figure, and then you're ready to pour. And then again, you're trying to pour, you know, up to, well, you can't see it. You're trying to pour to like, you know, above the nose, maybe like an inch or so, 2 inches above the nose. So I'm not going all the way up to here. These cottle boards have the capacity to where I can go up this high. And so like, depending on how tall your cottle boards are, that's going to determine like how tall, you know, your biggest mold is going to be. Or excuse me, your biggest half of a mold is going to be. Because this is one piece of a mold. If you wanted to do a second one, you would pour the first half, take the cottle boards away, flip it over, remove whatever clay or, you know, wood pieces on there, expose the other half of your sort of prototype, and then you would grease all that up, do the cottle boards, do that whole stage again, and then pour the second half. 2-part molds are super easy because the first half is the hard part. The second half is usually just like greasing something up and then just like pouring it. All right, but it's already past our time. So I can continue playing stuff up and then pour it and continue recording it. And you guys can just watch the latter half of it when I upload it. Or you can stick around. It's up to you guys. I know some of you guys have class after.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go because I have to get ready for my next class. But thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. I'll finish this because I don't want to waste my time of playing this up. So I'll keep it recorded and I'll see you guys later.
Cool.
I don't know if I'm gonna get to do the paper mache demo.
I mean, we'll just all we do is like, you know, put like Vaseline on it.
You know. Can't start a mold and not finish it. It just ain't right.
Wait for this one to soften and then
Yeah.
it's pretty soft out of the package. So I've been sculpting with it.
Yeah, I got you guys the soft one. Figure it would be easier to work with. I prefer the medium of that type of clay, but it can be harder. It can be harder to work with.
I do have like, I had to like reinforce some of it with wire.
Yeah.
But
So maybe I should order the medium next time.
like, I'm doing, I with it kind of heavy. And also, I bent it when I should have just sculpted it in the shape that I wanted it to be. So that one was funny.
Oh man, I can't even like put my music on. My phone is trapped above. Oh, I can put music on my computer. I wonder how much that fan was affecting the audio quality of that video.
Are they still there?
No. This is me hanging out in my Zoom room by myself.
I'm used to me just like listening to him talk on my ride home.
It's just like the weird podcast you got there.
Yeah. Do you want me to grab something for lunch?
That would be kind of amazing. I could Venmo you. What do they even have like around that's open anymore?
I don't know. It's like Rapid Ellis is closed, which is awful.
I normally go to that diner, but like it's fine. I'll go grab something.
No, I can bring you back something if you don't mind waiting till after my class. It's a short one.
That's good.
I'll see you later in an hour.
Okay. Oh, I'll be here forever. All right. Let's get some music going.
A rose, rewritten, clean and radical, sustainably sourced.
Tall and tan and young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema
Guys, I
goes
think I made the
walking,
mistake of not
when she
recording the right
passes,
thing.
each one she passes goes, ah. When she walks, she's like a samba that swings so cool and sways so gentle that when she passes, each one she passes goes, but I watch her so sadly. How can I tell her I love her? Yes, I would give my heart gladly, but each day when she walks to the sea, she looks straight ahead, not at me. Tall and tan and young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes I smile, but she doesn't see, doesn't see. Olha que coisa mais linda, mais cheia de graça, ela menina que vem, que passa, num doce balanço, caminho do mar. Moça do corpo dourado, do sol de Ipanema, o seu balançado parece poema, é a coisa mais linda que eu já vi passar. Ooh, but I watch her so sadly. Ah, porque tudo é tão triste. Yes, I would give my heart gladly, but each day when she walks to the sea, she looks straight ahead, not at me. Tall, tan, young, lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes I smile, but she doesn't see. Por causa do amor, she just doesn't see. Nem olha She never sees me. Ding, 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 ding. Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you in the way you look tonight.
Messy, 'cause we're gonna clean it up later.
Yes, you're lovely with your smile so warm and your cheeks so soft.
Way harder.
There is nothing for me but to love you and the way you look tonight.
Wood tools and
With each word, your tenderness grows, tearing my fear apart. And that laugh wrinkles your nose, touches my foolish heart. Lovely, never, never change. Keep that breathless charm. Won't you please arrange it? 'Cause I love you just the way you look tonight. And that laugh that wrinkles your nose, it touches my foolish heart. Lovely, don't you ever change. Keep that breathless charm. Won't you please arrange it? 'Cause I love you just the way you look tonight. Mm. Just the way you look tonight. They call you Lady Luck, but there is room for doubt. At times you have a very unladylike way of running out. You're on this date with me. The pickings have been lush. And yet before this evening is over, you might give me the brush. You might forget your manners. You might refuse to stay. And so the best that I can do is pray. lady tonight. Luck if you've ever been a lady to begin with. Luck be a lady tonight. Luck let a gentleman see how nice a dame you can be. I know the way you've treated other guys you've been with. Luck be a lady with me. A lady doesn't leave her escort. It isn't fair. It isn't nice. A lady doesn't wander all over the room and blow on some other guy's dice. Let's keep this party polite. Never get out of my sight. Stick with me, baby, I'm the fella you came in with. Luck be a lady tonight. Luck let a gentleman see just how nice a dame you can be. I know the way you've treated other guys you've been with. Hey, luck be a lady with me. A lady doesn't leave her escort. It isn't fair, and it's not nice. A lady doesn't wander all over the room and blow on some other guy's dice. So let's keep the party polite. Never get out of my sight. Stick with me, baby, I'm the guy that you came in with. Luck be a lady. Luck be a lady. Luck be a lady
You're into something new and you want to get good at it, like really good at it. YouTube Premium can help with that. You can study back to back to back without ads. You can download videos so you can keep learning, even when you don't have Wi-Fi or data. And you can keep listening with your screen locked. Upgrade to YouTube Premium. Try it free for 1 month.
I've got you under my skin. I've got you deep in the heart of me. So deep in my heart that you're really a part of me. I've got you under my skin. I tried so not to give in. I said to myself, this affair never will go so well. But why should I try to resist when, baby, I know so well I've got you under my skin. I'd sacrifice anything, come what might, for the sake of having you near, in spite of a warning voice that comes in the night and repeats in my ear. Don't you know, little fool, you never can win. Use your mentality, wake up to reality. But each time that I do, just the thought of you makes me stop before I begin. 'Cause I've got you under my skin. Sacrifice anything, come what might, for the sake of having you near, in spite of a warning voice that comes in the night and repeats how it yells in my ear. Don't you know, little fool, you never can win. Why not use your mentality? Step up, wake up to reality. But each time I do, just the thought of you makes me stop just before I begin. 'Cause I've got you under my skin. Yes, I've got you under my skin.
Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak. And I seem to find the happiness I see when we out together, dance cheek to cheek. Yes, heaven, I'm in heaven, and the gifts that hung around me through the week seems to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak. When we out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I'd love to climb to mountains, reach the highest peak, but it doesn't thrill me half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I'd love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Now, mama, dance with me. I want my arms about you, the charms about you will carry me through.
always pre-scratch my brush because I don't want errant hairs to get
I'm
involved.
in heaven.
You can
My
thin down
heart beats so
petroleum
that
jelly
I
with a hair
can
stand
hardly
down. It
speak.
sounds really weird, but it's salted
And
petroleum
I
product.
seem to find the happiness I seek
And you're able to thin it down to like a brush of
when we out
I don't think we have any.
together,
We'll look.
dance cheek to cheek. Take it, Ella, swing it. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak. And I seem to find the happiness I see when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and the cares that hung around me through the week seem to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak. When we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I'd love to climb a mountain and to reach the highest peak, but it doesn't thrill me half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Come on and dance with me. I want my arm about you. The charm about you will carry me through to heaven. I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak. And I seem to find the happiness I seek when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Yes, dance with me. I want my arms about you. That charm about you will carry me through to heaven. I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak. And I seem to find the happiness I see when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek, cheek to cheek, cheek to cheek, cheek to cheek.
True stories of creativity and resilience. The United States of YouTube. Visit now.
to, you know, have a bucket with a handle. People buckets are great. They do have the like measuring mixing buckets that also come with a handle. But it depends. All right, you're back where you need to be. So we've mixed our plaster. We are going to give one once over to make sure that nothing is like totally dried out. You know, it looks like I've got a little bit of moisture on this one spot, so I'm just going to fix that. For the most part, nothing else is like cracked out of its spot. Everything's still fully mounted, you know, to the ground or the base. Everything's greased up, so I'm ready to pour. I'm only tapping gently because it's only clayed to the board, and I didn't clay up the outsides as like a secondary measure. So I don't want to like hit it too hard that it like slides off of its like clay track. And that clay was like pretty dried out too, so gentle agitation on this one. Yeah, that form didn't have like a whole lot of crazy like places where like air could get trapped. So I'm not crazy concerned. I'm more concerned about having the mold blow out. Take it easy. No, now we're just waiting. We lost our ground music. So that's pretty much it. That's how you do a layup of the plaster, slip cast mold, or wax mold. You can pour wax into it. It's just a one-part open face. The way to make a two-part is pretty simple. It would have like one extra step, which is that like you would embed it in clay instead of just putting it directly onto wood. And the reason is you would want that clay to exist so that you could actually carve sort of a semicircle to act as a key and a registration point for the second half. You know, molds can be a little bit tricky if it's a complicated object and it's going to be more than 2 parts, but 2-part molds can be relatively tricky too, just because you're trying to divide it exactly where it needs to go, but we can talk about that more later. Yeah, great. So this is pretty boring. There's not really a whole lot to see right now, so I could stop the recording and then create a separate recording for, yeah, the Christmas moment when you demold it and you get to see what it looks like on the inside when my positive casting of a plaster becomes a negative of a mold. So yeah, I'll do a video whenever it's done. Great. Thanks for watching.